Most of you are probably already aware of Handmade Seattle, but for the rest of you, Handmade Seattle is a conference hosted by Abner. Next one is going to be this November, so link in the description in case you're interested. And if you go there, you will find a lot of interesting talks about systems programming and how to make better software. What you will not find, though, are talks about programming languages, because Abner decided to ban those. His reasoning is that he's seen way too many discussions about programming languages to the point that he feels like this is bike shedding, that's taking away energy from building good software, good solutions for the end user instead, which I agree should be our end game at the end of the day. That's, I think, a fair statement, like a fair problem statement, because if you think about it now, systems programming went from having like two choices, C and C++, to C, C++, Zig, Carbon. Carbon is the latest, right? There is a ton. And even within the Handmade community, there's already a few systems programming languages. So for example, I believe the latest is C3 by Christopher Lernow, then you have Odin by Ginger Bill, and then of course you have Jai by Jonathan Blow. So I agree that too many programming languages leads to fragmentation, leads to duplicated effort, and ultimately makes systems programming not more accessible, but less. But how do you fix this? What is the solution? And Abner himself doesn't know what the solution should look like, and I believe he said that he's going to think about this more and I guess eventually try to come up with an opinion and hopefully a plan. But in the meantime, I tried to think about it for a moment, and it's not obvious because all these languages exist because of disagreements on what the language should provide that are not just like skin level. Or let me put it this way, people have strong opinions about these differences. Like we could argue, I think we could argue that some things that people feel strongly about are really not that important ultimately. Case in point, tabs versus spaces, in my opinion. But regardless, there are a lot of very strong opinion about stuff. How do you convince people to find a common ground? I don't know. I really do not know. Another interesting thing is that while some could argue that Jai is the flagship programming language somewhat related to the Handmade community, I don't know to what point Jonathan Blow should be considered part of the Handmade community, but he certainly has a connection. There's no discussion there. Even though there's a company, Tekla, his company, who's investing in it, he's making a video game in Jai. One problematic thing with Jai is that it doesn't have an open source license at the moment. I believe that Jonathan mentioned that he intends to do so in the future, but at the moment, Jai does not have one. And I think everybody, especially in the Handmade community, recently learned that if something doesn't give you a license in perpetuity and or the right to modify and redistribute the software, which is what you get from open source licenses, then somebody could decide at one point to take that away from you, which is what happened with our machinery. So there was this, the machinery. So our machinery is the company, the machinery was the product, and the product was something like Godot. So a game engine plus an editor. It was very nice, and it was very, it was following the Handmade philosophy. It was somewhat minimalistic, very easily extendable. The problem is that something happened with the company. The software was never open source. You could get access to the source code if you were a customer. But what happened is that the company shut down. We don't know why. Some assume because of some patent infringement litigation thing. But long story short, the company closed and changed the license and basically yanked the license from everybody's feet and told people to delete the code from their machine even. So investing in, everybody who invested in machinery kind of got rug pulled to some degree. Although I would say that usually when we say rug pull, it's like crypto related, like somebody gains from pulling the rug under your feet. In this case, I think it was, nobody in our machinery probably gained anything. It was probably something unfortunate that happened. But regardless, the point that investing in a technology that can be yanked away from underneath you is risky, it's a fair point. And a language that doesn't have an open source license is a language that can be yanked from under your feet. So should you, so in the Handmade community, what should if you had to pick a winner, what should the winner be? I don't know. It should not be a language that doesn't have an open source license, in my opinion, especially given what we just saw. Other than that, I have no idea. How do you convince people to stop making programming languages? Because this is not something that people do in the spur of the moment, right? It takes a lot of effort to make a programming language. And I'm actually really curious to see what Abner is going to say about this. So that's it. Handmade Seattle, again, this November. Link in the description. Get a ticket if you're nearby. I've been to Handmade Seattle last year. It was pretty cool. So now there's not even a pandemic lockdown, no masks, hopefully. So should be super cool.